We are well into the fantasy offseason. That means if you're a win now, you've identified you're about to compete in 2023, you need to start looking at veterans to buy, or as we call them, win now trade targets, right? So today, that's what we're talking about. Guys that can help build depth or maybe even get you over the top to a title next season. Let's just dive right in. The first name, it's going to be Russell Wilson. I know what you're thinking, right? After 2022, win now and Russell Wilson probably don't feel like they make a ton of sense together. Here's the thing. He's being drafted as the QB 20 in startups. That is, to me, a little bit crazy, and it feels like a pretty big overreaction considering he has not finished outside of the top 20 quarterbacks, in points per game in his entire career. You go back to his rookie season, still wasn't the case. 2022 is the only season outside of his rookie year that he was not a top 15 quarterback in points per game. Do you look at him and think it is just completely fallen apart? He's never going to be able to bounce back? I don't. I really don't. And the reason is Nathaniel Hackett was terrible. I don't think we talk about how just truly terrible he was for basically everybody in the offense. 2 games without Nathaniel Hackett. So again, tiny sample, but Russ averaged over 23 points per game in those. In the other 13 games where Nathaniel Hackett was the head coach, the play caller, Russ averaged 13.7 points per game. Now, that could be a little bit of variance. That could be just them being relieved. Nathaniel Hackett's gone. But to me, Russ put up his 3rd and 4th best game of the season. I am going to look at that and say, I think he's better than a top 20 quarterback. I think Russ probably has the chance to finish as a top 10 quarterback again next season. Now, if you're looking for trade targets, who should you be giving up? Now, keep in mind, this is if you are win now. You're trying to compete. I'm going to give up Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett is being drafted ahead of Russell Wilson, so you may even be able to get a pick back on top with Russ. I don't believe in Kenny Pickett, so for me, this is an easy trade. And the other one here, and this is crazy to me a little bit, Brock Purdy is being drafted ahead of Pickett and Russell Wilson. That just screams like I want to cash out, right? Give me Russ and a second or Russ and another pick over Brock Purdy, especially, again, the goal is to win right now. Russell Wilson, regardless of what happened in 2022, gives you a better chance to do that. So Russ, an easy buy, low, win now trade target. Moving on to number 2 here. This is the only running back on the list, but again, running backs tend to be win now trade targets anyways. But I think Nick Chubb is an extra win now trade target. Obviously, right, he's turning 28 years old. It feels like the floor could fall out at any moment. I do not think it's going to be 2023. It's looking like Nick Chubb could follow up, a career high in touches with another season of just heavy usage. And to me, that can be magical for fantasy. It really can be. I think that's the word, because you have year 2 of Watson, potentially a workhorse Nick Chubb that we have been begging for years. And you put that together, and he has the ability to outperform what he did this season, right? Which was tie his career high in touchdowns, set a new career high in rushing yards, his 2nd highest target share of his career. The usage is there, and now you get Deshaun Watson for a full season shaking off the rust. It's very, very difficult to look at Nick Chubb and say he's a landmine in 2023. I think there's too much shaping up for him. I'm fine giving up that 2nd tier of young wide receiver because I think that's what it's going to cost to get Nick Chubb. So you probably have to give up a Christian Watson, a Treylon Burks, George Pickens, Jahan Dotson, right? That next tier. I'm not giving up Garrett Wilson or London or Olave, Jameson Williams even. But I will give up any of those other 4. Maybe you got to tack a second on. That's fine. The idea when you're win now is to cash in on potential and get guaranteed production. You have to give up a decent amount for Nick Chubb, but I still think he is absolutely worth the cost to acquire. We will get to trade target 3 and 4 here in a second, guys, but if you have not heard, we have released our YouTube memberships. Right now, we are dropping weekly additional videos that you guys get to see. And on top of that, if you like this video, there will be 2 more trade targets dropping only for our YouTube memberships. So go ahead, check that out, guys. A ton of extra content, including additional trade targets on all of these videos. All right, back to our trade target number 3. That is Hollywood Brown. Now, Addison's talked about him. I've talked about him before. I'm going to talk about him again because what Hollywood Brown was able to do with Kyler last season without DeAndre Hopkins was nothing short of spectacular. And that's extremely relevant because DeAndre Hopkins is out the door. He is gone. We know that. And basically what Hollywood Brown did with Hopkins healthy and Kyler healthy, that's really what I'm going to focus on, was put up a 26% target share. He averaged over 15 points a game, 15.9 to be exact. and he averaged 10 targets a game. That type of volume is what just naturally will produce points. So even if it's Colt McCoy to start the season, I'm fine with that. I am fine rolling out Hollywood Brown, right, as the alpha wide receiver. He's going to see an obscene amount of targets, and even if it doesn't fully, develop into his potential that we saw early in 2022, it's going to be fine. He's only 26, right? He's being drafted right now as wide receiver 24, which means you're not going to pay an insane price for a young wide receiver that has shown the ability to absorb targets at a very, very high clip. What do you have to give up to get Hollywood? Who's a reasonable, target here? I think any of those guys, right? The Watson, Burks, Pickens, Dotson. On top of that, you could give up like Rashad Bateman, and a second, I think, is a viable trade target. Or, give up like Juju and Sutton in some picks, right? Some older wide receivers that you might be able to attach a second to get younger and hopefully more productive. And our final trade target for our non-YouTube members, again, 2 additional ones if you sign up for the YouTube membership, it is Calvin Ridley. Now, Calvin Ridley just turned 28 years old and is being drafted as the wide receiver 43 in startups. That number is shocking because if you're on Twitter, you look around and you see a lot of people pumping up Calvin Ridley. I am one of them. I'm going to continue to be one of them. It feels as if his cost is significantly higher than wide receiver 43, but you look at startups and that is still where he's going, which means in a lot of leagues, he's going to be able to be acquired for a pretty reasonable price, right? Like I've seen him traded for the 201 in a super flex league. But the reason I'm in on Calvin Ridley is one, obviously Trevor Lawrence. He's ascending. He is an incredible quarterback. He turned Christian Kirk into a stud. And we know what Calvin Ridley is, right? The last time he was active, last season he was healthy, a 27.4% target share. The year before that, 25.8%. So he basically just earns targets at an insane clip, a clip that Christian Kirk has never touched. Calvin Ridley is an alpha wide receiver. Make no mistake about that. So if he comes back, the rust is not there. He has the potential to finish top 10, top 5 in points per game even. I'm going to buy in. If you can get him for, I'll go back to Rashad Bateman. You can probably trade Rashad Bateman for Calvin Ridley plus, right? People are all in on Rashad Bateman. Dameon Pierce, Tyler Algier, them for Calvin Ridley plus, I think is very viable or doable at this point in the offseason. Like I said earlier, right, the 201, I've seen that flipped. I'm fine doing that deal as well. So you've got a couple of options, I think, for Ridley. All of them, you probably get assets back, and he could absolutely obliterate the cost to acquire. All right, guys, that is all I have for you. Again, if you like what we're doing here, subscribe to the channel. If you got questions, you got comments, drop that stuff down below. And again, sign up for those YouTube memberships. As always, guys, thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.